Welcome to the Podunk Polymath, a podcast dedicated to the sentiments of a secular, sarcastic, screwed-up Southern SJW and skeptic. I'm your host, Chris. Come on in. This is episode 35 of the Podunk Polymath Podcast. I want to thank y'all once again for joining me. Hope you had a great week. I think we all know what everybody's mind is on this week. The bombing, of course, of Syria. Well, Syrian... Trump assumed, I suppose, was where the Syrian gas originated from. Of course, he warned Russia, apparently, beforehand. I don't know if that's true or not. But it's an interesting issue only because, is this something Hillary would have done as she expressed concern, I guess is the word, when she was trying to get elected about this sort of issue. And I just wonder if she would have done something similar. Now, the only thing is that it's Trump. I mean, it's one of those things where I don't support this sort of thing in general anyway, because what ends up happening is you're going to kill people with these strikes. It's never fucking pinpoint. Anyway, and they're going to fucking recover. This is just a symbolic shit. This doesn't mean anything really, and Russia's already talking shit about it. So, I mean, what did it really accomplish? Other than, I guess, see whose dick was bigger than the others, I suppose. And somehow this is supposed to solve anything. No, it doesn't. What you need to do is fucking send in fucking hordes of fucking people to fucking help these refugees. Here's the thing. Let people into our country who are refugees and help them out instead of making more refugees and not letting them in. So what have you done here? You have alienated more people and given more recruits to ISIS. So now I want to go ahead and say that there's no easy answer. Every answer is fucked. I will say that. But what this has done is probably made more enemies, hasn't really accomplished anything except for maybe a symbolic purpose, and it has made us look even worse in the world. And we didn't give, at least W has some semblance of a fucking coalition. We didn't even get that. This motherfucker ain't been in office for what's today? March? 3 months? And this motherfucker already trying to bomb people. So, I mean, that's just rash in general, regardless of who it is. But what else can you expect from the Cheeto-in-Chief? That's all I'm going to say about that, I reckon. But it's just fucked up. And I'm scared, honestly, of what's going to happen. And like I said in a tweet I put out, anybody who fucking supported Trump needs to be drafted to put on the front lines. So that's just my opinion about the whole fucking situation. This week, I have somebody on to talk about domestic violence. Her name is Mel Rice. She's a great person. I met her through Marissa McCool. She's upbeat. She's a sweet, kind person. And I hope y'all learn something from this conversation, because I sure as fuck did. So, listen to the rest of the show. I hope y'all enjoy it.
Where's the best place to meet your online friends? Where's the best party where the fun never ends? Where will Bobby Carey be our MC too? I bet you'd go if you only knew. It's ReasonCon, it's ReasonCon in Hickory, North Carolina. It's ReasonCon, it's ReasonCon, and the speakers couldn't be finer. We've got Matt Dillahunty and Aaron Ra, Callie Wright and Lawrence Krauss. We've got god-awful movies coming to you live, and Jim Craig and Shelley Siegel really jive. It's ReasonCon, it's ReasonCon. Meet the people in your favorite podcasts. It's ReasonCon, it's ReasonCon, the conference where you'll have a blast.
Coming to you from Reason Alliance Media, this is PSF, Promoting Secular Feminism. I'm Misbehavin'. Wait a minute, that was the old show. You're right, Princess Sparklefarts. A new age of PSF is upon us, and it will be so very uterific. So very uterific? Really? Your name is Princess Sparklefarts. You have no room to criticize. Our show will be returning on Galentine's Day 2017, which is February 13th, with a special episode about the Women's March in D.C., where we have one of our crew marching. We'll also introduce you to the PSF 2.0 crew, Miss Amthrope, Vegeta George, Mora Abortions, Bella Constrictor, and your old favorite, Misbehavin'. Tune in on February 13th and every week after on iTunes, Spreaker, Stitcher, YouTube, on our Android app available in the Google Play Store, and check out our website for old episodes, new episodes, and the upcoming blog. There's even a post right now about what we can do to support each other and the organizations we love in facing the new regime. I'm Miss B. Haven, keeping the humorous in your uterus.
Welcome to another edition of Palaver here on the Podunk Polymath Podcast. This week I have somebody with me that I met online through Marissa McCool. She's a really cool person, and she's here to talk to me about a subject that doesn't get enough play, but should, because it's really important, I think. So if you'll join me in welcoming Mel Rice. How's it going, Mel?
Hi, how are you?
All right. Sorry about my voice to you and to everybody else. Apparently allergies are going to be perpetual for the next 3 months here in Tennessee. So anyway, yeah. First of all, why don't you kind of tell everybody who you are and, how you know me, I guess.
My name is Mel, of course. We met, I think, through Marissa, to be honest. Not too sure, but the wonderful Riss. We met up a couple weeks ago, probably about a month and a half ago, and we're talking about it online, and I think I remember you coming on because we were mutual friends, so I think that's how we met.
That sounds about right. Yeah, you were hanging out with her, I remember that.
Yeah, she's pretty awesome.
She gets around quite. I don't say it like that. To say she goes a lot of different places to meet people is what I meant.
Yeah. She's doing some good things. She is.
Yeah. So I wanted to have you on because I was speaking with you. In fact, I noticed your tattoo. That's what it was. You had I saw your tattoo online or something. I was like, what is that for? Because I thought it was interesting. It was a bird escaping a cage, I believe.
Yes.
And you said it was DV, representing DV or something. I was like, oh, what's DV? I'd never heard that little acronym or whatever. And you said it's for domestic violence. And I was like, wait a minute, that's something I had not thought of, but I said that would be perfect for my show. And I think that is definitely something that people need to know more about. So first of all, you wrote a blog post last night or yesterday, or was it? I've lost time.
Yesterday, last night, sometime.
Yeah.
Sometime within the past 24 hours.
And you had mentioned basically some statistics along with some other things about your thoughts about it, which I thought was really good, and I was quite impressed. So first of all, can you just kind of give an idea of some of those statistics that you told in your blog post?
Sure. Domestic violence is basically, when people think of domestic violence, the majority of the time they think about physical violence. And any of that domestic violence, it occurs within a domestic partnership. It can be with a man or a woman and a woman, or a woman and a man. It does not matter. There is no race. There is no gender. When it comes to domestic violence, there are victims completely across the board. 1 in 3 women are actually victims of domestic violence, and 1 in 4 men have been, at some form, victims of domestic violence. It's staggering, and it is something that is not talked about enough. Just within the past couple of years, legislation has huge strides with the protection of women, and the majority of the time it is stereotypical, and I hate that it is, because, like I said, 1 in 4 men are victims as well. But President Obama has signed into law the Violence Against Women Act, and it puts in a lot of protections for people that are victims and survivors of domestic violence. And it's amazing because I, for one, have been helped dramatically through those programs. It helps send tax dollars to shelters and places that help women and men when they escape abusive relationships. And hopefully, when Trump was elected, that was one of the programs that terrifyingly was going to be cut, from what I understand. And it's unfathomable to me, as far as we've come in that area, that that's going to be taken away. There's going to be a lot of people that will potentially be harmed because of this. It's very difficult to escape a domestic violence relationship when you know 100% you have nowhere to go. And when there are places like shelters and advocacy places that are funded by the government that step in and help you, you know you have that. But if those places aren't funded, they can't help. And it's scary. It's really scary.
Yeah, so having said all that, you yourself were a victim of domestic violence yourself.
Yes.
As much as you're comfortable, as much as you want to talk, and much as you want to say, can you tell that story?
Sure. I have actually, my divorce was finalized 2 days ago for 4 years. So I've been free for 4 years. 4 years and 2 days. March 31st was my divorce date. I got married when I was 19. I had my little girl. She will be 20 in September. And of course, everybody always starts their stories with, it was wonderful in the beginning. Because it was. You know, when you're in a new relationship with someone and you really, really like them, it is wonderful for the first little while, especially when you're that young, especially when you don't know any better. I was a young mom, and things were pretty good. You know, I had moved out of my house, my parents' house, the day after I turned 18. And when I graduated high school, we moved 2 hours away to another state. And I was home with her 99% of the time by myself. So, of course, I wasn't working, and I was stuck inside. And things still were pretty good. And then after a while, things just got slowly but gradually, they started. He was an alcoholic, still is an alcoholic, I will say. And that is another statistic that alcohol does play a huge part in domestic violence. It is alcoholism. It's not an excuse, absolutely. Alcohol and drug abuse is a lot of the times. He would drink, and when he was drunk, he was not a very nice person. And it got to the point where, you know, I would just try to ignore the situation, do everything I could not to inflame the situation. And after a while, that didn't even matter anymore. I had worked for a major box corporation, major retailer, and I had gotten a promotion to where it would allow him to stay home from work with the kids. And at the time, we had 3. And, of course, there was physical abuse probably from the time my daughter was not quite a year old. The very first time of abuse I remember was when I was pregnant for her. And we had gotten into a fight because he wanted to go out with his friends and drink. And, of course, I didn't want him to. So that was the first time I remember that it had gotten physical while I was pregnant for my daughter. And ever since then, you kind of, when at the beginning stages, you kind of are like, well, you know, I can stand up for myself. He's not completely hurt me yet, so I can stand up for myself. And trust me, it gets worse. A lot of women tend to think, well, it'll never get that bad. It'll never get that bad. It always gets that bad. It always gets that bad. He decided to stay home with the kids, and he said, you know, I will take care of the house. I will be the stay-at-home dad. You go to work. My job was 40 to 60, sometimes 80 hours a week. And it got to the point where he was just living there and drinking there. And, of course, I was mom. I was breadwinner. I was house cleaner. I did everything. And that was a lot of the tension caused in the house. But being a victim of abuse, you don't bring it up because it causes flare-ups. Which to him, you know, abusers are very secure about themselves. And the reason why they do abuse is to show power that they know they don't have. And they just pretend they do. And with him being home all the time, that was a major source of heat because he knew he wasn't helping and he knew that he could be doing more, but he wasn't. And I don't think he felt bad about it, but I think he felt insecure and he knew that he should be. And it pretty much got to the point where for 20 years, I was there for 20 years. And finally, somebody at work had found out what was going on at home. And I had gone to work with broken nose, busted lips, black eyes, bumps, bruises on my neck, you name it. And somehow I lied around it. Always lied around it. I remember one instance, and I'll give you it might be a little bit graphic, but he had been up drinking all night, and I had to get up and be at work at 7 in the morning, and which meant I had to be up at 5 a.m. to get ready and to drive the hour to work. And he had come to bed and he was very nitpicky when he was drinking. He wanted to wake me up. He would belittle and he would badger and he would just try to pick fights. So I would try to ignore him. And finally, I'd had enough and I did snap. And the only thing I remember was him on top of me. It was like a movie, with him on top of me with both fists coming down on my face. And when he finally stopped, I had gone downstairs and I called his mom and said, you need to come up here and sit with the kids. I have to go to the hospital. Your son just beat the shit out of me. So she come up to the house and she looked at me and she said, oh, it's just a broken nose. They can't do anything about it anyway. You shouldn't go to the hospital.
Excuse me?
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Instead of saying like, oh my God, what the fuck happened? You know, you got to get to the hospital. You need to call the cops on this guy? Or something like that?
Yeah. So, I was like, yeah, you're right. You know, and I was embarrassed. You're embarrassed as a victim. You don't want people to know because you don't want people to look at you in a certain way, or you don't want people to have pity for you. You want to keep it secret because you don't want the attention. And I knew that if I had that attention, the worst could come because he wasn't going to let it go. So I waited until he fell asleep and I got dressed and I went to work. And I walked into work with 2 black eyes, a busted lip. I had teeth marks on my bottom lip for where my teeth had gone through my lip. And I told the manager that I was relieving that morning that I had fallen over my dog in the dark and I had hit my head off the coffee table.
Yeah, that's classic.
Yeah, and they believed me. Everyone believed me until around the time I had a boss that I worked with, and he kind of had off the wall made a joke about it. And this boss and I had been friends for years. We worked together for probably 10 years, and I knew him very well. And I kind of nonchalantly was like, yeah, that happened. And, you know, the first person knew. And it was like, you know what, that felt pretty good. I'm scared, but that felt pretty good because now somebody knows. So, you know, I just felt like I was getting stronger and stronger. And, you know, I had somebody to talk to about it. And, you know, the encouragement, it makes you, you know, once somebody finds out, that's why it's so important. If you see something or you know something, say something. That is so important. That is more important than people understand. You could save someone's life by just saying, hey, I think I know what's going on. Do you want to talk about it? Because I don't know that I would be where I'm at if I wouldn't have off the wall made that joke. Because with someone else knowing, it gave me courage to listen to him say, well, you know what? You can go. You have this option and you have this option. And finally one night, it's so strange because I always thought that the day that I would leave would be the day that something really, really bad happened. And the night that I left, it was just, and I say just, and it's really not, but a smack across the head is what it was that got me to leave. And I was standing in the hallway, and my kids were in their room, and they heard it, and they saw it. And, of course, they had for years. And he smacked me across the head, and everything went blank, and I could just hear ringing. I went deaf for like 30 seconds. And I was thinking, now, get them and go now. So I grabbed all 3 of my kids, and I said, let's go. We're going now. So, of course, I knew what was going to happen. He followed me to the car. He tried to block us. My kids, of course, were screaming and yelling. And he was screaming and yelling. And the next thing I know, my daughter, she'll be 20 now, looks over and says, Dad, just let us go. Please just let us go. So he backed away from the door, and I got in the car, and I drove away. And I remember thinking, where the hell am I going to go? Nobody knows, you know, what I'm going through right now. Nobody knows that this has been going on for 20 years. Where do I can call my mom, but my mom lives in a 1-bedroom apartment. I can't go there with 3 kids. I can't go to my dad's because, you know, he's got his own family now. There's no room for 3 kids and me. I felt like I can't burden it. What do I do? So I drove to a local hotel and pulled in the parking lot and just sat there for about 20 minutes. And I thought, I can go in here and I can get a room and it'll cost me $60. But what if I need that $60 later? So I picked up the phone and I called my mom and I told her, and she said, she was working, and she said, come to where I'm at right now. I will give you the key to my house. While you're on your way, I'm calling the police, and I'm calling your cousin. She's going to meet you at my house. So I said, okay. I mean, I didn't know what to do. I almost turned around and went back home. Thank goodness I didn't now, but I went and got the key to my mom's little tiny apartment for my mom and my cousin, she is like my sister. We were raised together like sisters. She met me there, and my kids went and they fell asleep, and I stayed up the entire night just fielding phone calls because I told no one where I was. My dad didn't know where I was. No one in the family did except for the two that I talked to. And, of course, my ex now was calling everywhere trying to find me. He had called my dad's house. He had called my mom. Of course, my mom didn't answer. He had no idea where I was, and it just didn't stop. So my mom called and said, I just called down to the police station. They want you to call them. So I called down to the police, and this frustrates me. I called down to the police station and told them what was going on, and they said, well, we can't do anything about it now because you left. But if you would have stayed and called the police, we could have arrested him. And I thought, so you really have to honestly wait until they hurt you before they can do anything about it.
Basically.
Yeah. So he said, the best thing I can tell you to do is to go to the courthouse first thing in the morning and ask for an emergency DVP, which is a domestic violence petition, which essentially is a restraining order to keep him away and for me to get my house because I had left and he was in the house. So first thing in the morning, we went over, and the bailiff, this is where the amazing, wonderful people that stepped in to help me did. The bailiff walked up to me with a card and said, here is the number to a shelter and some advocates. If you call them right now, most likely your petition will be granted immediately. So I called this place, which was a crisis center for women, and they had a lady come over, and she helped me fill out the paperwork. She walked me through everything. She talked to me, and they granted me the restraining order immediately. And 2 state police officers went to my house and removed my ex-husband from the house, and he was not allowed within so many feet from us or the kids or our animals. And I know that sounds weird, but when you go through a domestic violence case, animals are actually a protected class, at least in the state of West Virginia, because apparently abusers like to abuse animals too.
Oh, God.
So, yeah. So that happened. That's when that happened. And it was, I won't say it was easy after that because, you become a possession after a while. It's not that they care about you, and it's not that they want you in their lives. It's a possession and an ego situation. And once you actually get up and leave and they don't have control or power over you anymore, they don't like that. It's the narcissistic part that comes out that says, I can't have you, nobody else will. So, of course, I had the domestic violence petition that wouldn't allow him to contact except for if it was about the kids. So, of course, he would find everything he could about the kids to talk about so that he could call or he could text or, anything like that to do with the kids. But after a while, he got the hint, and although we still have to have contact because of the kids, it's strained at best, I guess you could say. But I'm a survivor, and he doesn't have power over me anymore, and that's where I am today.
Wow.
I probably rambled a lot in through there, too. I get to talking, and my brain goes faster than my mouth does.
No, that's why I wanted to have you on to tell your story. I mean, last week I had my friend on to talk about addiction, and he just told a story, and I just wanted to tell it, and it's the same kind of deal. I want people just to tell their story, get it out there, without me getting in the middle of it, because, you need to let people, you need to listen instead of trying to get in there in the middle of it and just let them talk.
Yeah. But
let's kind of go a little bit back and first of all, do you remember exactly the first time it happened, it started?
To be honest, I'm sure that there were little signs and little things that happened before, but the major one that I remember was, like I said, I was pregnant for my daughter, and we had gotten into an argument. He wanted to go out with his buddies, and that's the thing, a lot of times in the beginning, I would try to fight back, because, your instinct is to fight back. And he had lunged at me, and I put my hands up, and I was pregnant. I'm not talking a little pregnant. I was probably about 8 months pregnant with my daughter, and he grabbed a hold of me, and he yelled at me. And to this day, I don't even know what this means. I never even looked it up, but he looked at me and he said, "You need to stop. Do you want a day-glow abortion?"
A day-glow abortion.
Yeah. I will never forget those words. But to this day, I have no idea what that even means. I just knew that I needed to back away quickly, or it wasn't going to be pretty. But that was the first time that I can remember where there was actual physical violence. Now, of course, there is mental abuse, and there is verbal abuse, and there is what psychologists call gaslighting, which is a real thing, people, that happens. They make you feel crazy. And there's a movie about it.
Yeah, that's where it came from, I heard.
Yeah, yeah.
What is it, though? What is gaslighting?
Well, basically, like with my ex, I can give examples, I guess. A lot of times he would do something or he would say something to me, and I would bring it up later as a defense about something. Like he would ask me to do something, and I would do it. And he would get mad because I did it, and I would say, "Well, you asked me to do this." "No, I didn't. You're crazy. I don't know what you're talking about. I did not ask you to do this." And he would take the things that he said, and he would say that he didn't say them, and it would make you feel like you were crazy. For a long time, I would question myself whether or not things really happened, because he would tell me, "That never happened. You're crazy. That never happened." Pretty sure it did, but, you know.
Yeah, basically trying to make you feel like you're the one that's out of your mind.
Yes, absolutely.
Basically, taking your emotional experiences and say, "Hey, I don't know what you're talking about. I think you need to go get help or something."
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. And one of the things he was especially during the divorce part, he was trying to hit low. Of course, he didn't have a very good job. I did. He tried to get spousal support, and he tried to get child support, even though I had custody of kids. And in the state of West Virginia, it's legal. Even if you have 50-50 custody, he could have gotten spousal support and child support from me. And he told me through text one time, "I've talked to my lawyers, and they think I can get this because I believe you trapped me in that room that night to make me do those things to you. And I told them, I think that you need help and that you've told the kids that you wanted to commit suicide." Okay, never happened. Number one, ever happened. So I spoke with my lawyer and I said, "Listen, he's trying this stuff. What can we do?" And she said, "Well, you would have to pay out of pocket for it, but there's a thing called, it's a child advocate lawyer. And basically what it is a lawyer that the state sends in that speaks to the children. It's called a guardian ad litem. And they take the children into a room and they discuss the situation with the children and find out what the real deal is." So when I told him that I was getting the guardian ad litem, I got a call the next day that he had dropped everything and that I could have whatever I wanted. So that's where we went. Yep.
Funny how that works.
Yeah.
And also, of course, you had kids involved, and of course, I'm sure, as well as you have PTSD. I'm sure that's a thing.
Yeah. My oldest, from the time that we had left, she had gone on visitation. They were allowed visitation on Saturdays and Sundays with him. And she had gone the first couple of weekends because the court made her go. And within the first couple of weeks, she decided she was not going anymore and refused to go. And she speaks to him if she has to. If he texts her or calls her, she doesn't answer. She pretty much has wrote him off. My husband right now, who's an amazing, wonderful, he has been my rock through, I just have no words for him. She looks to him as her dad. He is her dad. My middle child, Zoe, she was 11 at the time. She has been through therapy. She has anxiety. She has panic attacks. She is now at the point where, at the beginning of it, she is one of those really kind and soft-hearted kids that she feels bad for people. and he would use her as his therapist, and she would listen, and that hurt her a lot. So she had to go to therapy, and she will be 16 now, so she's at the point where she doesn't want to have anything to do with him either. She's tired of it, and she probably has not been to see him in 2 or 3 months, I guess, maybe a little longer, probably since Christmas, since before Christmas, that's right. Since before Christmas, because she didn't even go over there on Christmas. She didn't want to go over there on Christmas. She's starting to see him for who he is. And then my son, he is 13. He's not quite, he was really young, and he remembers things, but he's been in therapy, and he's been diagnosed with social anxiety disorder and ADHD, and he probably has had the worst time of all of them. He used to have rage fits, which worried me because, the things that he'd seen, you tend to worry if it's going to rub off on your kids, and your kids either A, think that it's acceptable behavior and let it happen to them, or think it's acceptable behavior and do it to someone else. So he started having rage fits, and so we put him in therapy, and come to find out he just has social anxiety disorder. Thank goodness. I hate to say that that's a good thing, but social anxiety disorder and ADHD, which causes him to, when he gets upset or mad, he doesn't know where to store his anger, so he lashes out. But he has done a complete 180 from where he was even just last year. He's passing every single grade in class, in school. He listens without having to be told, sometimes even once. He's on a strict schedule for things to help him with his ADHD. So, and he still goes to his dad's, but there are days where he asks me and says, can I stay an extra day with you? And I'll be like, sure, bud, whatever, you can stay as long as you want to. So I feel like it's just a matter of time before he starts seeing things the way they really are. Because dad's house is fun land. He gets to do what he wants at dad's house. He can play video games till 3 a.m. if he wants to at dad's house. So it's more fun at dad's house.
Well, of course. I mean, he's going to try to use that.
Exactly. He's trying to win them over, but they're doing a lot better than they were. I haven't been in therapy, which is something I probably should do. I do have anxiety and depression, and I do take medication for that, but I have anger issues. Like when I get upset or anxious, I get angry. And I've never lashed out or hit anybody. I just get grumpy, like really overly grumpy. But I do have some tendencies to where, loud noises, they bother me. And sudden movements. I have a startle reflex, like that's out of control. Small things. If a cat jumps up next to me, I feel like I'm going to, pee my pants. But but that comes with, sudden movements, jerks, things like that. Because, I could be sitting there having an argument with my ex-husband, and next thing you know, I get smacked up the side of the head. Those things, that tends to make you cautious when you see something quick move out of your peripheral vision. But I have a lot of support. I have an amazing family, and my husband, like I said, is amazing, and I'm grateful and lucky to be where I am.
I was going to say, your family seems to have been wow. I mean, not everybody has that support, and you were, one of the things, you're lucky that you had that family support.
Yeah.
And I think that's awesome. I've heard stories of kids and mother and kids ended up in a homeless shelter or something because they had nowhere else to go, but it was either that or, stay with an abuser or whatever. So
yeah, and that's why it's very important that the funding does not go away for that, because that's what helps those women. I was lucky that I had family, but I also had an outrageous lawyer bill that I did not have to pay because my lawyer was a domestic violence advocate lawyer, and it was paid for me completely. Everything was paid for me. And a lot of women will stay in those relationships because they can't afford to get a lawyer. They can't afford to find someplace else to live, or, like you said, they're in shelters. And this funding that these places get helps women like that if they don't have that, they'll go back to their abusers. And a lot of times they don't make it out alive.
Yeah, I've heard stories about that too.
Yeah.
Here's a question. I'm just off. Why did he even get any custody at all?
Well, in the state of West Virginia, they do parenting classes. And because he had gone to the parenting classes, and because he was not violent towards the kids, he was not. I was his only outlet for his anger. He would scream at the kids and he would yell at the kids. I think they were emotionally and verbally manipulated, but he had never laid a hand on them physically, except for, like smacks in the butt that went too far, which I'm totally against. But as long as he went to the parenting classes, they like to try to give parents equal opportunity, which, I'm a very forgiving person, and I'm the kind of person that in order for me to move on, I have to forgive other people, and that helps me heal. And I don't want to be the parent that keeps their kids away from their father if they don't want to be. That's why I gave my kids the choice. When they were old enough to make the decision, they could make their decision. And that's why 2 out of 3 of them don't want to have anything to do with them. So
that makes sense. I mean, I can understand your point of view, especially, like you said, the youngest one didn't really remember any of that stuff, but I'm sure it still affected them. I mean, when you're a child, your brain's like a sponge. Mm-hmm. And just because you don't necessarily remember the shit doesn't mean it didn't affect you at all.
Right, exactly.
Let's talk a little about this shelters that you're talking about, this kind of support network that's supported by this funding. I didn't know about them they would pay your lawyer's bills if it was, in your certain situations. Is this like a national thing, or is it just like a network of different providers that help each other out, or how's that work?
Well, in my case, I had gone to the Family Crisis Center that we have here. And when I had gone out, my advocate actually had gone to court with me the first time I went for my my DVP, my restraining order. And she sat with me the whole time. She gave me advice. And she wasn't a lawyer. She was just an advocate. She sat with me. She was a volunteer. And when I went out I didn't know what to do next. As far as a lawyer, I knew that I couldn't afford even a retainer to see, what could be done. And so I went to them at the crisis center and I said, do you suggest someone? Who do you recommend? Because I don't even know the first place to go. And they told me, as an organization, they can't refer me to someone, but they could give me information on pro bono lawyers that specialize in domestic violence. I was like, absolutely. So I live in West Virginia, and the attorney was out of Morgantown, which is about an hour away. It's where WVU is. And she had come in from Morgantown and interviewed me. And of course, I think that a lot of that too goes by your income. But like I said at the time, I was, upper management at a big company. And I wasn't eligible for a lot of, things at like Health and Human Resources, DHHR, fund, places like that. So I thought, well, I don't know if I'm even eligible for something like this. But I was. So I'm not sure if it was based on my income, but it was pro bono because she was a domestic violence attorney out of Morgantown. And I don't know if it was federally funded through her or if it was just organizations that ended up donating to her, or if it was her own time, which it could have very well been her own time, because a lot of lawyers do pro bono work for people that can't afford it for reasons like this. But totally grateful. But here's another side story. It's cool to me, but my mom is also a victim of domestic violence. And when she left her abuser, she went to the same place I did. And when she went, she didn't have anywhere to go. She was one of the women that ended up in the shelter and stayed there. And when she had therapy there, they did therapies, which of course that stuff costs money. It costs money to get certified people in there to help women. Who's going to pay for that? That's where this funding comes from, or that's where this funding goes. And when she was well enough to be on her own, they provided first and last month's rent to an apartment. They provided all of her furnishings, TV, couch, bed, you name that, anything in her house, new microwave, everything, because she left with what was on her back. And the crisis center provided her with that. And that is where this money comes in, this funding that's coming. This is what goes to these women. And if it's gone, I mean, I don't want to think about what is going to happen to these women, because they'll either A, not leave at all, or B, they'll have to go back because they don't have any other resources to go to. It's scary.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I'm going to do a little research and put some links up about domestic violence, ways people can get help, or, resources for the women who are, well, I guess there's guys too, but mostly women that are abused. But and of course there's a difference between if you're just by yourself, or if you have kids, like you have 3 kids, and I'm sure that makes it even worse. I mean, it's one thing if you're just one person and maybe you could find something, stay with somebody or whatever. But if you got those 3 kids, I mean, that makes it even worse.
Yeah.
So I can imagine where you would definitely need help in that situation. Mm-hmm. You were talking before about you hadn't been to therapy or whatever. Is there did you just feel like you didn't need it, or did you just...
I think for me, I'm a very prideful person. I'm one of those, no, I'm okay. Somebody else needs it first. Like, I wanted to make sure my kids were okay first. My kids saw someone. I made sure that my kids were healthy, and they were healthy mentally and physically. I have always been the kind of person that, it's not that I was embarrassed. Well, yeah, I would honestly say there was a little bit of embarrassment there, because it's an embarrassing thing, especially when in your mind you're afraid people are going to look at you and think, how did you stay for so long? Why did you stay for so long? Because it's these, questions that you don't have answers to. And if, I were to go and I was embarrassed to go talk to somebody, part of it. The other part was like, oh, I'm a big girl, I'm okay. I can handle it. I'm good to go. I can handle this on my own. Pride.
And I can understand that, and I know a lot of people that are that way, and I don't want to, I don't want to be that person, but I'm just saying, you should definitely, even if you don't think it affects you, I mean, I'm sure I don't have to tell you that it's there, and it's those things you were talking about, the sudden noises and, sudden movements, those are classic symptoms of PTSD. So, I mean, I don't want to tell you what to do or whatever, but you might want to go seek out some help, even if I think talking to people.
Yeah, and see, this has helped. This has helped a lot. Like I said to you last night, even writing my words down and talking to you, it does make you feel better, because when you keep something in for so long, there are people to this day, close friends of mine, that have no idea, because I wasn't public about it. A lot of people, when they, something happens to them, they'll blast it on Facebook like, well, I left so-and-so, and this is what happened. They cheated on me, and blast it on Facebook. No one knew. The only difference that you could see on any of my social media was that I changed my last name back to my maiden name. And to this day, there are people that have no idea. They just thought we split up. They have no idea.
Yeah, I can understand that, because I'm that way too. It's just fairly recently I've started putting more emotional stuff up, and I just still feel strange about doing that, because I don't want people to, it's not their problem. I don't want to be that, I don't want to feel like I'm whining or something.
Exactly. That's exactly how I feel. And a lot of times, like when I first left, I didn't talk about it much to people, because I was afraid that people were going to look at me differently, number one. They were going to feel pity for me, which I don't want. And I was gaslighted so hard by my ex-husband that he made me feel like it didn't even happen sometimes. And I've got, to this day, bruises and holes in my walls and examples and hospital visits and ER visits that I could go back to prove that it happened, but I wouldn't talk about it or say anything about it because he would deny it. And it would make me feel like, well, what if nobody believes me? What if nobody believes me and they believe him over me? How is that going to make me look? That's terrifying.
I mean, I can understand that. But at the same time, I mean, sometimes I guess you just gotta take chances with that kind of thing. I mean, it's either keep it in and let it fester, and then it emerges in some other more harmful way.
Exactly.
Like maybe like you say, your anger issues or whatever, which are pretty mild considering, I get grumpy. Shit, some people maybe, would start throwing shit just randomly. I mean, so that's pretty mild considering what you've been through,
Oh, no, my husband might not say that. He might think, why are you snapping at me? He tells me, why are you snapping at me? Or he'll say, did you remember to take your medicine?
Oh.
He jokes with me. He's an Iraq veteran. He has PTSD, so he really can't say much to me. But it's all good.
Have you ever considered, or maybe you already do, volunteering and helping other victims of domestic violence?
Yes. Actually, I am in the process of working with the crisis center that helped me. I have been in contact with them and sent them my resume to help volunteer out there with them because they helped me so much. First and foremost, yeah. That's the first thing I'm doing. I would love to start I don't necessarily want to call it a support group, but even if it's a group on Facebook for domestic violence survivors that are secular. Because when I left, I was still a Christian. But now that I'm not, it's hard to find resources and hard to find people that don't look at you and say, I'll pray for you, honey. That's hard to do.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh. How about you actually do some shit instead of telling me?
Yeah.
I can't stand that. Ugh.
Yeah.
That's a whole different thing, though.
Yeah.
That goes for a wide range of things, not just this particular instance. But, well, I'm glad that you are doing that, and I'm glad that I hope in some small way getting your story out maybe will help some people.
Yes, I hope so too.
And maybe be therapeutic to you as well.
Yeah.
I mean, in some way, I don't know, maybe so. And you just, I guess did you say 20 years?
Yeah. We, I would say just shy of 20 years. Yeah, we were together.
What kind of coping mechanisms did you develop to be able to put up with that shit for 20 fucking years?
Well, it's a lot of walking on eggshells. It's a lot of, my anxiety level now, believe it or not, is non-existent compared to what it used to be. Because he would stay up all night drinking, and then in the morning or afternoon, I should say, when he would wake up and come down, everybody was literally on pins and needles wondering what kind of mood he was in, because you didn't know if he was going to wake up in a good mood or if he was going to wake up in a bad mood. And if he woke up in a bad mood, everybody heard about it. I mean, it was, the first thing, did somebody feed this dog, and just flip out because somebody didn't feed the dog? Something like that. You were always on edge wondering what the next thing was going to be. If I was gone too long, was I gone too long? Am I going to go home and then, get in trouble because I was gone too long? Even if I was at my dad's house, silly, stupid little things like, the charger plugged into the wall is not his charger. He's flipping out about it. Just anger all the time. And I don't know how I did it, to be honest with you, because when I look back now, what was I thinking? But
well, I mean, you didn't. I don't know. I'd drive me to drink, but of course, if he was drinking, you don't want to add to that.
No, I didn't drink because I knew that if something happened in the house, I would have to be the one to take somebody somewhere.
Yeah. Right.
But
yeah.
I read a lot. I did. I would get my Kindle out and I would disappear in a book, or I would watch a movie, or just do something away so that I could be gone. I just tried to be invisible. I guess that's what it was. If you're invisible, you can't start fights.
Have you set aside a part of your mind that you just go to where it's kind of blocked off from all the other shit? Your happy place, that's,
Yeah, your happy place. Yeah.
But I'm serious. I mean, that's a lot of people do that. They kind of just somewhere they can go in their mind where it's blocked off from the rest of the shit that's going on in your life. And you can the stuff is still there, but it's more fade into the background, at least for a little bit, until reality comes falling upon you once again,
Yeah.
What a journey, though, that you've been through. I mean, so right now you've remarried?
Yep.
Do all of your kids still live at home?
He has 3 kids and I have 3 kids. So together we have 6 kids.
Like the Brady Bunch.
Exactly. We're the Brady Bunch. 3 girls and 3 boys. My oldest is, like I said, she's 20. She is out on her own. And my 15-year-old lives with us. And my 13-year-old, my son, we have 50-50. So he's with me half the week a little more than half the week, and then his dad's the rest. And then my husband's, my 3 stepkids, they're here every other weekend because they live out of state. So they are here every other weekend with us. So that's always fun, especially every other Friday and Saturday. We have 5 kids in the house, which is crazy fun.
Crazy/fun or crazy fun?
Crazy/fun. But yeah, my husband's amazing. He was actually the second person to find out that I had left the night that I left. He, and this sounds weird, and it's probably going to make a lot of people be like, what? But we've known each other since birth, literally. His cousin and my cousin are the same person, but there is no relation. That sounds crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's...
Okay, see, we have to draw graphs because people don't understand, but his dad and my cousin's dad are brothers, and my mom and my cousin's mom are sisters. So there's only a marriage relation there. So We're not related at all whatsoever.
Your cousins-in-law.
In-law, yeah, it would be cousins-in-law. Yeah, if there was such a thing. But yeah, we grew up like best friends, you know. We were always together as kids. We lived right down the street from each other. And the night that I left, my cousin, which is my cousin that I think of as my sister, called him and said, listen, if I won't use the words I like to call him, but the dark one, if the dark one calls you looking for her, will you please say you don't know because such and such happened? She just left. And he was like, do you need me to come in right now? Because he lived out of state. And she was like, you know, no, we're good. So it's probably been about 2 years ago, we decided to go see a band together because I had planned on going. And he called me and said, listen, I'm going to go too. Do you want to ride together? I was like, well, sure. Well, we got married about 6 months later, so crazy.
Okay, that's interesting.
But he's amazing. He's been so understanding because I'm not the easiest person to live with when it comes to a crazy ex-husband that thinks he still owns his family. He has had to a couple times grab the phone from me and take care of business, which I'm grateful for. He's awesome. He's really awesome. He saved me.
Well, this story seems to have a happy ending.
Yeah, very much so.
But there are others that don't have such a happy ending. I think we probably need to realize that as well, which is why it's imperative that you, like you say, well, we have these funds, these resources for domestic violence victims and survivors, so that this kind of thing that you're talking about can be the norm and not the exception. Because I dare say, I don't know statistics or anything about it, but it would seem like your story is kind of an exception. I don't know. Yeah,
mine ended well. There's a lot of them that don't. Actually, just an hour or two from here last week, 19-year-old girl was stabbed to death by her ex-boyfriend because she had just broke up with him. Stabbed to death because she had broke up with him. That needs to stop. It happens too frequently, more than people know that it does.
And I think a lot of it is just men have this idea that they own women. A lot of guys think just patriarchal society. I don't want to, to get too SJW or whatever, but I'm sorry. It's just, they have this idea that, they own women and that they owe them something,
Oh, yeah.
And you don't break up with me, I break up with you.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how this works, So I think that has something to do with it.
Oh, I agree. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, do you have any final thoughts?
Just that, please, if you even have an inkling that something is going on with someone ask them. They might lie to you and tell you that nothing is, but at least they know that you know, and they might feel a little better later on coming out with it. If you think something seriously is going on, don't be afraid to call 911 just to get somebody to check it out, because even if it's nothing, it's better to be nothing than something and you have not done anything about it.
Yeah, because that would wear on me if I knew or I thought that something was going on and I found out later that maybe if I had done something, it might have saved that person's life even. That would have...
Absolutely.
That would have messed with me.
Mm-hmm.
And like you say, don't gaslight people too. I would add that.
Yes.
Because I know a lot of times people, oh, you're just exaggerating. it's not that bad. He didn't really mean it and shit like that,
Yeah, that's where a lot of the guilt comes in with victims. They think, oh, well, maybe it's really not that bad. Maybe, because like I said, the night that I left, I just got smacked upside the head. I had a lot worse things happen to me during the course of my marriage. And for me to leave because of just a smack on the head, that mentality should never be. It doesn't matter if he pokes you in the eye or he flicks your arm. It's still physical abuse, and it is illegal, and they need to be held accountable for it. No matter how big or how small you think it might be, it's still not supposed to happen to you.
Exactly. Well, Mel, I really want to thank you for coming on and talking to me. I know this probably wasn't easy, but hopefully this will help people, all 5 people who listen to this. It'll help maybe somebody out. Maybe that'll be the thing that, will help them move on, try to move on or try to help somebody else, or maybe even volunteer at their local shelter or whatever.
Exactly.
And I'm definitely going to put links up. I'm going to do some research. I'm going to find as much stuff as I can and put up the links on the show notes or whatever.
Right. And if anybody has any questions, if they want to find me and message me on Facebook, I can help point them to, there's an actual website called Domestic Violence Shelters. I think it's domesticviolenceshelters.org, and it actually gives you the different shelters in your areas. So that's a good one to go to, too, because a lot of times people don't know where to go, and they don't know that there is shelters in their area, because a lot of the shelters, like mine, is hidden. It's not out in the open of anywhere, because a lot of the people that go there have to go into hiding because they don't want to be found. So a lot of times cities and towns have shelters and people don't know they're there. So that's a good resource if you want to find out where your local shelter is.
Well, I don't know. I'll put up the link to your Facebook profile, okay. I guess. If anybody, of course, don't just friend her for no reason. Don't be one trying to sell her any. This is for real shit. Okay, don't be crazy. Of course, you want to be friends. She's a cool person anyway. I mean, on Facebook, she's always really cool and really helpful and just a generally sweet person. Of course, that's on Facebook. She could be completely different in person, but Marissa's hung out with her before, so.
And you'll see me at ReasonCon, so I have to be who I am on Facebook at ReasonCon, so I'm...
That's true. That's true. All right, Mel. Well, again, thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
All right, well, definitely, and take care of yourself.
All right, bye-bye.
That'll do it for this episode of the Podunk Polymath Podcast. I want to thank Mel Rice for coming on and talk to me about domestic violence. Despite what she's been through, she seems to be upbeat and doing well, even though I contend that she probably could use somebody to talk to, and she seems to be somebody who wants to think of others before herself, which is an admirable trait, but sometimes I think we need to go ahead and let her know that she needs to go ahead and help herself as well. Of course, if you want to check the show out, you can go to podunkpolymath.com is the website. The music is done by ... cdbaby.com/cd/... is where you can find their music. Of course, if you want to check me out on Facebook, it's /the Podunk Polymath, Twitter @Podunk Polymath, email podunk.polymath@gmail.com. Of course, youtube.com/the Podunk Polymath, and Google Plus, which nobody goes to. Look for the Podunk Polymath. If you want to become part of the Patreon posse, you can go to patreon.com/the Podunk Polymath. Call in at 615-378-POPO 7676. You also can join the Podunk Polymath Posse Facebook group. Of course, if you go to facebook.com/groups/the Podunk Polymath Podcast Posse, all separated by periods. And I also have now an online store. You can go to Zazzle.com/podunk_polymath. Of course, if you go to the sidebar, you'll see where you can follow me on WordPress, follow me on Twitter, and you'll see some tweets there as well, my recent tweets. I have a PayPal donate button, and you can subscribe on RSS, Google Play, iTunes, and Stitcher via buttons on the sidebar. And there's also a Patreon donate button. You can see recent posts and recent comments. I want to apologize for my voice. Once again, allergies have been my downfall, so I apologize for that. Again, I want to thank everybody who listens to the show. I genuinely appreciate it, and I honestly am thankful that anybody listens to the show at all, to be honest with you, because it's not that great compared to other ones, but you could spend your time in better ways. That's all I'm saying. So until next time, y'all take it easy now, okay?